You are streaming the future of radio. Songcast Radio.
We have a very special guest on this edition of Spotlight, a world-renowned guitarist and instrumentalist by the name of Pete Hawks. Check out his Wikipedia page for tons of information about his storied career. That is Pete, Hawkes. Let's get things going with a track called Edwina's Paradox. Here it is on Songcast. Edwina's Paradox from Pete Hawks as we begin an exclusive interview on Songcast. I had a great time chatting with Pete about his career, his travels, and his incredible music. If you like what you hear, buy some tracks from Pete Hawks on Amazon and iTunes. Throw some links on your social media to stream his music on Spotify and Pandora. Check out some of his videos on YouTube. Support this great indie artist. We'll start off our interview with Pete just telling everyone a little bit about himself and what he's all about. Here is Pete Hawks, special guest on this edition of Spotlight.
Been a professional since 14 years of age. I started really, we had an old guitar called the Paddle, which my father used as a paddle when he got drunk one night in the, we used to live on a lake, and I practiced listening to music called, Robert Johnson and the early blues players, and just listened to records and loved it. Interestingly enough, I kind of learned slide guitar before I learned anything else. And then it went from there. I started playing around, local clubs and stuff, even when I was around about 15. And I was getting gigs and shows and supporting, bands at that stage. Newcastle, which is where I live in which is about 100 miles north of Sydney, had a really vibrant rocks, blues scene, very, very big blues scene. From there, I went more professional, and I actually went down to Tasmania, which is an island off Australia, and learned to make guitars for a while, and came back then and got a little bit more serious. I moved to the Capital Territory and recorded my first album with a very famous fiddle player who's now died. He died. His name is Dave Swarbrick. He used to play for Fairport Convention, and he guested on a few tracks. My first record was the record Secrets, Vows and Lies, which since has been reproduced a few times, and that got a record deal. And we toured with I toured with a Still I Span, and then with a very well-known guitarist called Bert Jansch in Australia, and we toured most of was picked up by Festival Records. After that, I went to London and recorded and played over there. Met up with Dave again in Fairport Convention. They have a festival up there called Croppity, and that, you know, I played pretty much through all of England. Picked up a big following. I was on a lot of papers and stuff and everything else. Surprisingly enough, at the height of my success, I suppose you could call, and I recorded more songs over there, and I was doing session work. It kind of got to the stage where I just didn't. It was getting what would be the word, overbearing and too big for me. In a way, I was playing small clubs and everything else, and then I was playing 1,000-seater halls, and I had a song on the Secrets, Vows and Lies record called A Housewife's Lament, which was very popular in Australia, and I got to be on a TV show, and through the Fairport mailing list, it sold thousands and thousands of albums. A record, you know, it was very popular. So I had a lot of people, you know, coming out of the woodwork asking for me, but in the end, it kind of got too much for me, and I ended up just leaving it all and going to St. Petersburg. And strangely enough, I stayed there for about a year and just played with on Nevsky Prospect, played with the Gypsies, and did a lot of jazz with the local Russians, who are still very good friends. And then I took the Trans-Siberian back to China and back to Australia. And after that, I just really decided to compose music and write for a living. So I changed from being a performing artist to an artist who writes, you know, many genres. So now I write jazz, classical, ragtime, blues. I write for cello. I've done string quartets. I've done orchestral music. Last year in Manhattan, I did an opera with a lot of the people who do the Broadway shows. So I've diversified, and I write for film and TV. I still perform, and I still write, but my focus has been more on writing. And I've hooked up with a lot of artists here. In particular, Phil Emanuel, who died last year, and I'm not sure if you heard of the Emanuel brothers in Australia, but they're quite big here. And it's gone from there.
Let's talk about some songs off of that Secret, Vows and Lies, your first album.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about the track I've Changed My Mind.
Well, it was one of the first songs I wrote, and it was simply about making a decision to become a musician for a living, which is a pretty hard thing to do. And, you know, I've changed my mind. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to make a direction about, you know, because, you know, you're pretty itinerant and travelling around all the time. But it felt good, and it was kind of really a decision. The song is really saying it's a decision about what I'm going to do, and I'm going to, you know, I've changed my mind. I'm going to do this now, you know, and and that featured a really great harmonica player. I don't see much now, Malcolm McDonald, but he's if you listen to that track, there's a really great harmonica solo on that track.
Let's check it out. Here is Pete Hawks, I've Changed My Mind. True music discovery on Songcast.
Leaving this town, you know, I changed my mind. Easy living will do me fine. I'm gonna roam. Anywhere will be my home. 'Cause I don't understand the rat race reward. Work one day so you can work some more. Is it a crime? Satisfaction for your time. I tell you people, there's so much I ain't seen. So I'm being melodramatic when I say that don't get out of this town, it'll be the end of me. 'Cause the two of us been traveling for some time. Yeah, my partner's my guitar and we get along just fine. I tell you people, I don't wanna hurt no one, 'cause I'm so easy to please. Just give me a guitar, let me sit around and play in the sun. 'Cause the two of us been traveling for some time. I tell you, nothing else ever made me feel so fine. For some time. I tell you folks, nothing else ever made me feel so fine. Well, I'm leaving this town, you know I changed my mind. Easy living will do me fine. I'm gonna roam, anywhere will be my home. Anywhere, anywhere, anywhere.
You are streaming Spotlight, True Music Discovery on Songcast. My name is Joe Cleon. Our featured artist is Pete Hawks from Australia, an incredible guitarist. Check out his page on Wikipedia to learn about his storied career. We started off our interview on Spotlight by talking about a release called Secrets, Vows and Lies.
So what happened with Secrets, Vows and Lies? It was released in a particular format, and then it was re-released a number of times. On the second release, I put in a couple of new songs. This was one of the new ones. So this is one of my most favourite song of mine, because it just seemed to really gel really well. It had I like the arrangement, and it really, the story is really to say you don't really have a lot of much time in your life, really, and you should focus on enjoying it. You know, it's a sliver of time that you have. It's dark before you start. You kind of enter into the world for a very short time, almost a blink of the eye for the universe. You're gone, and in that time, don't sweat the small stuff. You know, try and enjoy the life. You know, the song says, if time was an ocean, life's just one wet drop. And so just understand that it's finite, your time, and one day you will go, and to do what you want to do while you're alive as much as possible. So that's the story. And also, a lot of people wait too long, you know. They work in a job they hate all their life, and then, you know, they're in their age, and then they have health problems or cancer, and it's too late. So, you know, now's the time, as Charlie Parker might say. So I think, yeah, that's the story behind it. But the arrangement, really good solo fiddle arrangements and flute by, and the voice, it just turned out. It's just one of those things that and I wrote it very quickly. You know, as I do with a lot of my songs, I get an idea and I'm pretty focused on doing it pretty much straight away. And, you know, by the time the night's finished, I've got the arrangement. Basically, it's always acoustic guitar first. I do all my stuff underlying everything is this fingerstyle acoustic guitar that I do. But yeah, no, it's a favourite of mine simply for the message, and also, you know, it turned out, you know, after mixing and mastering and the rest of it that you do, there's not a lot of songs you listen back and you go, oh, I'm really happy with that. But, you know, I was quite happy with that one.
From the release Secrets, Vows, and Lies, here is Pete Hawks with a great track called If Time Was an Ocean. True music discovery on Songcast.
If time's an ocean, life's just one wet drop. And when we go, we're gone. So why you worry about these petty things? You don't have very long. Take some risks, make some mistakes, try to live your dream, you know it's not too late. Try and make the time work for you. You know, the older I get, you know, the more I see life's just a lucky dip, and nothing's guaranteed. And the best you can do is smile and see it through. John worked hard all his life, did all the right things, tried to stay out of strife. But boy, would he have his fun when he retired. Then cancer struck at the age of 62. When God rolls the dice, what can one man do? 'Cause the future we'll never know, and that's the truth. If time's an ocean, life's just one wet drop, and when we go, we're gone.
From Secrets, Vows, and Lies, world-renowned guitarist and instrumentalist Pete Hawks. That song is called I've Changed My Mind. Pete is our featured artist on Spotlight. We had a great interview, talked about all kinds of stuff, and we've got some more stuff to talk about from the release Secrets, Vows, and Lies. Here is Pete Hawks, our featured artist on Songcast. Why did you decide to put some new tracks on the re-release of Secrets, Vows, and Lies?
Because I wasn't, so Festival released the first record and I took the rights back after going through a court case, and I wasn't happy. First of all, Dave had guested on the track and they featured him prominently because he's very famous, and I just wanted him as a guest, which is what he was. Phil Emanuel had come, who's a very famous electric guitar player. As I say, he died last year, but he got awarded the Australian Medal for Honour or something. But he really was, Phil's really undershadowed by his brother, Tommy Emanuel, who lives in Nashville now and is worldwide famous. But Phil Emanuel's probably one of the great electric guitar players unknown of our time, a bit like Danny Gatton or these other people. Les Paul used to bring him up all the time, you know, and these kind of people, and ask how he's going. We got together and we did a lot of work. We actually did a record, which is on the Songcast, called The Lost Souls Entwined, which is worth listening to. But we did some tracks, and we did a version of Bojangles, which we really loved, and he played on that track, and I wanted to include that on the Secrets, Vows, and Lies track, and I wanted to actually make the record mine after Festival had done their thing with it, and I wanted to. So there was also a Civil War song called "The Battle Cry of Freedom," I was always wanting to do an album of American Civil War songs because there's some of them are so beautiful and there's some great stories to tell there. But so there was an original version of that, the Battle Cry of Freedom, but I didn't particularly like that version on the track, and I changed it. So there was just some things that I wanted to do to make the record mine, and after it sold out of the copies that I had with Festival, and so I had to reprint it. It's been my most successful record. The song was also featured and played a lot on radio, A Housewife's Lament, which was the centerpiece of the album, and it's about a woman who finds herself again, and the words are about a woman who's been treated pretty badly by her husband, but she gets the courage to pretty much start again, and at a later stage in her life she's going to do her own thing, and she's going to not put up with the bullying anymore, not put up with the it's over, and she makes a decision to go, and it struck a chord in audiences in Australia and sold a lot of records in England. Like I said, it was huge, mainly the message, and so I wanted to also that version in the original was very long, and I wanted to change and do some things with that song that I'd always wanted to do. So basically, for all those reasons, I modified the album. It's a better album now.
Tell me about Emotional Winter, the last track we'll talk about from Secrets, Vows and Lies.
Yeah, well, it was one of the first songs that I wrote for that album, and it was going to more of the it was going to be more all like that, but then I changed. I included some things in the album which were pipe tunes, Irish Celtic tunes. Like there's a song there called The Irish Lady's Dream, which is just an instrumental, which I really like. There's a version, there's a guitar instrumental called Conversations. But the Emotional Winter was about a guy who, in a nursing home, who had kind of was 95, and he was just staring at the window, and I'd managed to see a friend who was there, and he was next door to him, and he was just saying, staring at the window, and he was mumbling something, and I went over there, and he said, the summer's gone, I'm just here in this emotional winter, staring at the rest of my life, and it just really struck a chord with me, and so I wrote the song really about that, and about how for some people, when you're old, another emotional winter, never used to mind the cold. You can bear it when you're young, but when you're old and you're kind of fragile and on your own, there's a loneliness there that is, with all people across the world. I think in Sweden they're now trying to solve that by having older people in communities together, and it's very successful. I just don't like the isolation of old people in these kind of homes where they kind of just move them out as if they're not useful anymore. So that song was about him, and really the message from what he was saying, I was just extrapolated because he was only mumbling, and the song came from there. But so the message was about that, and really it's a song about loneliness and solving a problem for loneliness.
Here is Pete Hawks from Secrets, Vows and Lies, An Emotional Winter. True music discovery on Songcast.
Another emotional winter. Never used to mind the cold. There'll be no more springtime now that I've grown old. Another emotional winter. survive. Dreams are all I have. Keep me alive. Another emotional winter.
Pete Hawks, our featured guest on Spotlight. What a great track from Secrets, Vows, and Lies. That is An Emotional Winter. If you like what you hear, buy some music from Pete Hawks. Support this hard-working, prolific indie artist. You can find his music on Amazon, on iTunes, Spotify, Pandora. Check him out online on Facebook. Say hello. Tell him you heard this program on Songcast, and tell your friends about this incredible guitarist, instrumentalist, and songwriter. Our interview continues with Pete Hawks, and speaking of him being so prolific, we were talking about just the massive amount of music that he has written. Here is Pete Hawks, our featured artist on Spotlight. You've written over 1,200 and recorded over 1,200 songs. Do you ever get writer's block?
Strangely enough, no, but I don't treat it like I've written all kinds of stuff, and I find it interesting to do new stuff. Like the last record I did, which is not on the Songcast, but I will be putting it on, is A Touch of Opera, and I went over to Manhattan and recorded in this great studio. Where was it? In Manhattan. Not Greenwich Village. It was somewhere. It was this fantastic studio. Anyway, we had a great time, and we recorded with all the people who do the Broadway shows. Sarah Norden. These great voices, amazing voices, and we included on there a track called Arabiana, which has taken me 9 years to write, and it's 11 minutes long, and it has operatic versions, and it has like a Arabic kind of version, and it's been recorded with people from Russia to China to France. So that's probably it's won a lot of awards, that song. I'll put that on the Songcast. But basically, no, I keep writing. There are periods where I stop when usually I'm busy, I'm doing something or whatever, but the music's always been a conscious flow to me, and I'm continually playing guitar or whatever. The ideas haven't stopped yet, but I don't treat it. Because I love it so much, and I'm kind of engrossed in it. I don't treat it like a job. Like I remember J.J. Cale once saying, I kind of had this job where someone employed me to go and write songs, on a regular paycheck, for a day or so, but I couldn't do it. And I understand what he's saying. You can't just sit down and go, I'm going to write a song. You have to have a bit of inspiration. You have to, deal with the guitar. You have to have an idea, or something has to hit you. But I think in my favour, I'm a bit of an observer of humanity and an observer of different things. So I'm always kind of, and I have synesthesia, so I see music in colours. So with those things, it's always kind of there, if you know what I mean. The only difference is the first record I did, I had some things I wanted to say, which was Secrets, Vows and Lies, and they're songs with words. But since then, I really have been writing instrumental music. I haven't done an album with songs since Secrets, Vows and Lies, but I want to get back to doing something because I've got a few things I want to say. But again, you've got to have something to say, and it's got to be real. So, but to answer your question, no, not yet.
One of the more interesting parts of your story, at least to me, was the time you spent living in China. Can you talk about that? When did you go there?
Yeah, so what happened was, like I said, I went to St. Petersburg, and I actually had hooked up there and stayed there for probably about a year and a half, and then I got the Trans-Siberian back across the Silk Road. China are now building this huge highway between there and Russia, apparently. But those days it was just like a train you could get, and it was just amazing. You go across Mongolia anyway. Anyway, you end up in Beijing. So I turned up in Beijing, and then, I just had a guitar and everything else. So I started going to these places, and the Chinese they're into the music and everything else, but there's the Communist Party, and there's still that aspect of it, more so then than probably now. So I started playing jazz and American music and teaching these people, and they were getting really excited about it. But then when we were playing at the North Shore or one of these clubs, some of the party officials came in just to have a drink and everything else, and they didn't like it. And they didn't like the fact that that they thought I was being collusion into taking Chinese away from their traditional music, and so they put in a complaint, and went up to the Communist Party, and they I think got this letter saying you're not to play jazz with the Chinese or American music at this time, and we recommend that you go home. so I thought, okay, well, I won't, I'm not going to, fair enough. I'd kind of been there for a while, so I actually took a plane to Shanghai, and then I went back to Australia. So yeah.
How long were you in China?
Oh, a couple of months, probably max.
Let's move on to a release called Ragtime and Blues, and a song called The Boisterous Border Collie Rag. That's certainly an interesting name for a song.
Yeah, well, if you listen to the very back end of that song, there's a great flugelhorn, Elijah Mays, and he makes the sound of a dog. It sounds like a dog barking, but it's actually the trumpet. It's at the very end of the song, and in the middle of the song you can hear some little dog barks or ruffs, and that's actually all done by musical instruments. But he's so good that it's. I have border collies. I've got one now, Tom, who's they're just the most beautiful dogs. But I actually wrote this for a border collie I had before then called Charlie, who was the love of my life. He'd come and sit on your bed and watch TV. He'd watch Lord of the Rings, and when Gollum would come on, he'd get scared. He was only a little puppy, and they're the most intelligent dogs, and they're just beautiful, and love you to bits. But I had a cleaner, and when the cleaner came in, because I used to go on tour and clean the house, she was an old lady, and she'd forgotten, and she left the door open. Charlie got out and got hit by a car, and I was looking for him for weeks, and then I eventually found him, got to the vet, and there he was. And so I wrote him this song about when he was a happy little thing, chuffing around, and it's got that really investigative kind of dog going on a walk, checking out and having a smell of everything and looking around kind of feel about it. Actually, a lot of people have used it for their dog. I noticed on YouTube there's quite a few people using it, but it's great. That's great. So, but yeah, no, and the fiddle player on that is just, if you listen to that, he's on fire. Who was that? He now lives in New York. I'm trying to think of his name now because there's a lot of them. Malcolm. Oh no, Michael McClintock. Michael McClintock plays the fiddle on that, He's Irish or from Irish descent, and he plays in a band called the Crossroads, and they were huge there. They were kind of a Celtic band. I'm not sure what they're doing, but he moved over to New York, I think. But if you listen to the fiddle on that, it's just shit hot. Great fiddle player.
Here is Pete Hawks and the boisterous Border Collie Rag. True music discovery exclusively on Songcast. Pete Hawks, featured artist on Songcast. What a great track that is called The Boisterous Border Collie Rag. From the release Ragtime and Blues. Head online to Amazon, iTunes, buy some tracks from Pete Hawks, Hawkes. Support this amazing indie artist. At this point in our interview, we turn to an album called Evocative Violin Volume 2 and a track called In the Labyrinth of Lady Laura. Here's what Pete Hawks has to say about this particular track.
I did a record called Witchcraft, which was really, I wanted to write really nice classical music and really for a string quartet and arrange tunes for a string quartet. So I was on a mission to do that, and he really played the violin behind all that, and then we put out this the evocative violin and the classical albums with them. So the album, there's songs like Revelation of a Rubicon, The Warlock Stream, and all those quite quite like the Warlock Stream and In the Labyrinth of Lady Laura. The arrangements I was really pleased of, and the violin, some of them are violin, but they have also cello, like strings, viola, violin, cello. Recently, I did an album when I was in Kiev, so the Russians quite like my music, and I go overseas to Kiev and Ukraine and Russia. And I did a album called the Kiev Recordings, and there's a really great violin player there called Miroslava, and she plays with a band called, and they're huge over there. What are they called now? Something Quartet. I can't remember. But anyway, so yeah, I played with great fiddle players all over the world. Swarbrick was, of course, one of the greats. They're fantastic players all over the world, of course.
Here is In the Labyrinth of Lady Laura from the release Evocative Violin Volume 2, the music of Pete Hawks, our featured artist on Songcast. You're listening to an interview with renowned Australian guitarist and songwriter Pete Hawks, exclusively on Songcast. Tell me about your collaboration with Joe Cocker.
I did some work with him in the studio. We met. So what happened with Joe was, when I was on the Festival label, and this is going back a while, Festival Records released Secrets, Vows and Lies, and I was touring it. And in those days, they had state offices. And I was actually behind Joe. He was doing a tour here. And I met him. He was going up the stairs and he'd had too much to drink. He cleaned his act up later on, and he went out and just played straight clean for a long time. But before that, he used to drink a lot, and he etc. I think everyone knows the story of Joe. So anyway, I met him at the stairs there, and then because we were at the same hotel, we talked and everything else. And he was recording at the time in Australia, and we were in Melbourne. So he invited me onto the record, and we did some recording with him. I'm not sure where it went to or what happened, but he really loved the guitar. I play electric slide for a lot of and acoustic slide for a lot of people all around the world as a session muso. He kind of heard of me, and so yeah, we hit it off, and that's how that happened.
Do you know if he ever released that song?
Yeah, I was always wondering about that. I'm not sure whether he did or not. He was going to send me the mix and the final mix, and then he went on a tour overseas, and then I lost track of him. And then I'd love to, because I actually heard only I kind of heard a portion of it, and then he had to put his vocals on and the rest of it. So I don't know how it actually turned out in the end.
What was the name of it? What was the name of it?
I don't know, because the session, when I came into the session, usually what happens is they give you the song, you listen to the whole thing, you do it, and you go through, you know what it is, you talk about all that, and then, it's highly, it's well known. In this case, we didn't have a lot of time, and there was like a 5-minute session of the instrumental stuff, and he said that had a huge lush orchestra behind it, and then he said, can you put some guitar behind this section, and then I listened to it, went on for about 3 minutes, and I put some guitar behind it, and I tried a few different ideas. As you do in a mix, you might try 3 or 4 different ideas, and they go, that's great, fantastic, and we'll use that, and then that was it, you know what I mean? So I didn't really get a chance to, and after I talked to him, later on, he said, because everyone was really busy working in those days, and you kind of don't have a lot of time, and you're going from one place to another. And you're recording when you can. And I said, can you send me a copy of it? And Joe, he said, yeah, no problem, and everything. But then I lost track of him. So I've been trying, I might write to the, I'm not sure who his management is now that he's gone or whatever, but I might try and see what happened to it one of these days.
Do you currently do a lot of live shows in Australia?
No, well, what I do is because I write, I really concentrate on writing now. I get asked to do a few. Albert Lee came through here recently. He's a great guitarist, and there's a great venue here called Lizottes. And I did the last venue, I did that with Phil Emanuel, we sold out, but that was a while ago. I'd be keen to actually write a record with words. I've got some things I want to say again for the first time, and when I release that, I think I might just go on a small tour again. I'm getting older now, so the touring is really good when you're young, and I did a lot of it. But you've got to have something to say, and you've got to want to do it. So I get asked to do shows, like I'll do festivals here and there, and if it's right and it works, I do them. But I'm not... I'm not doing hundreds of shows and everything like I used to.
Are you currently recording any new stuff?
Yeah, so at the moment, I just finished that the record, which I will put up, which is I finished a record called Blasphemy of Reason, which was saying something about Trump, actually, and I was putting a record together, and I really liked it. I'll release that on the Songcast, but it's got a lot of the stuff I did with the Manhattan voice, but it also incorporated cello and a lot of stuff very, very different to anything I've ever done. That's my latest one, which is probably a year old now. I'm going to probably put that album out as a CD, and then on the other side I'll do another songs album like Circuits, Vows and Lies. But it's about time. I've had a long time between drinks in getting an album which has words again, something to say. But I want to talk about the current situation in the world. We've just had these people, in Sri Lanka kill these deaths that happened then in New Zealand, and there's this strange kind of thing that's happening around the world that needs to be looked into. There's so much hate going on, and different cultures are kind of winding back. There's the Brexit thing. There's a lot of people in the States that are very disillusioned, you could say, or there's a change in the way people are thinking now. There's a change in also our planet. It's kind of dying, and no one seems to be really focusing on the fact that it actually can. So they're interesting times, I think, and a lot of challenges. And there, for the first time, unless you've got something you want to say and you want to reach out to other people, I don't see the point in making a song with words. I don't. unless you've got something that you really feel that you've got to contribute with. I probably will do more tours once I release that record, and then I do, a double album. The other thing is, not many people are, really buy CDs these days. But when you're on tour, you sell a few. But I'll probably do this one as vinyl maybe as well, because I have never done a vinyl record. So
Vinyl's getting big.
It is big, yeah. No, I listen to all my stuff vinyl. I did a tribute record to Louis Armstrong, which I want to kind of expand on and do as you would do with a record like that in vinyl. And I want to do finish the project, which I've got a few songs for, which is the songs for the American Civil War. So I've researched that and looked into some of the stuff. There's some amazing stories there. They used to shoot, kill each other and fight, and then this guy would play trumpet and everyone would stop, in the mornings. And just there's a lot of beautiful. If the Civil War was a terrible thing, but one good thing that came out of it was a lot of beautiful music.
Let's talk about a couple tracks from selections of classical and jazz works. How about Revelation of a Rubicon?
Yeah, well, that was one of the songs that Michael McClintock played on, and all those songs, Warlock's Dream, In the Labyrinth of Lady Laura, Revelation of a Rubicon, they all are a piece of work that I did, which I wrote for a string quartet to try and put the acoustic guitar behind it and get a sound for a string quartet that was, you would call folk. It's not classical, it's like folk classical. It's more gentle and it has a particular kind of style. It's very hard. People try and pigeonhole music and classify it, but really music is just sound, and it exists on a infinite continuum spectrum. There's no real classification, because it's like it's not a quantum thing, it's a continuous thing, and there can be any sound and people can give a name to it. But this kind of music is slightly different to classical. It's got a bit of more of an old world feel, and quite pleased with that song. A lot of interesting cello. The Warlock's Dream has a really amazing end to it. Also, with a cello player that is like a Hendrix of cello players. Gareth, his name was, and so that piece I was quite pleased of as well as part of that kind of project.
Here is Pete Hawks with Revelation of a Rubicon. True music discovery on Songcast. listening to an interview with Pete Hawks on Songcast. Tell me about your curious creation in Cream.
It's a jazz exploration where I did acoustic guitar, and then it has a really very good trumpet player here, very famous. He did some work for Little River Band, and apparently John Lennon loved his song so much, his solo so much. He used to dance with Yoko Ono. It's what was the song? It's a Little River Band song called I can't remember now. Anyway, but he used to hate John Lennon, so I found it quite interesting that. But anyway, it's got him on it, who's a really great trumpet player, and it's got a fiddle player, not a new fiddle player, a kind of a Cajun Russian fiddle player on that, and it's just a really good jazz piece of music. It's just a curious creation. So I wrote it one night. Quite out of the blue, put the guitar down very quickly, and put it all together. Yeah, but it's just an interesting piece. It's just one to listen for. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Pete Hawks for spending time with us, telling us about his great music, and for being part of the Songcast family. Once again, if you like what you hear, if you enjoyed this program, show it. Buy some music from Pete Hawks. He's available on Amazon and iTunes. Lots of tracks. He's a prolific songwriter. You can stream on Spotify. You can stream on Pandora. Tell your friends about this indie artist. Say hello to Pete Hawks on Facebook. Once again, it's HAWKES. And this is our final track of the program. What a great song this is. Curious Creation in Cream. It's Pete Hawks from Australia, our featured artist on Songcast.
Listen, explore, discover indie music from around the world. Spotlight features all types of indie music: hip-hop, rock, pop, electronic, country, blues, jazz, and more. Spotlight. Listen to thousands of hours of archived indie music anytime, anywhere. Experience Spotlight, the best indie music from around the world. Commercial-free and free to stream. Songcast Radio. True music discovery.